No more money for you. It's lazy. You lazy. You lazy. No more money for you.
So be.
You teach me all my life that the white man is the devil.
What the hell is that? Come on,
You teach me my whole life that the white man is the devil. now you tell me it's all right for him to come among us.
Maaga Egawa Jacob Fry, Doke Magalada, Minneapolis. Damaan, Shaabka Somaliyed, Kayimid, Mogadishu, Garowe, Hargeisa, Bosaso, Bedabo, Kismayo, Wahan Rabah, In An Idin Shego. Minneapolis, Wa Magaladina, Wahad Kamid Tihin, Laf Dabarka. Magaladan Ka Digesa, Boshado, Isku, Duban. Si Kasta u Madewen, Donald Trump u Su Rugo, Sharki. Minneapolis, Wa Magalo Garnesa, Wanaga, Iyo Kemaha, Ad Ledehin, Ugo Danbenti, Wahan Idin, Leahe, Eid Wanaxen, Eid Mubarak. Damantin, Wahana Idin, Rejeneya, Inad Wati, Fian, La Kadatan Dadkina, Ad J. Shaheen. My name is Jacob Fry, Mayor of Minneapolis, and I want to speak directly to the Somali community. Whether you come from Mogadishu, Garowe, Hargeisa, Bosaso, Medoa, or Kismayo, Minneapolis is your city. You are a vital part of the fabric that makes our city strong, diverse, and united. No matter what policies may be introduced by President Donald Trump, Minneapolis stands with you and values who you are and what you bring to our city. I wish you all Eid Mubarak, and I hope you have a wonderful time with your loved ones. Donald Trump's justification for the travel ban hinges on one Egyptian national who allowed his hatred for Netanyahu's actions to spill over into violence against innocent Jewish people in Colorado. That logic is dangerous. Holding entire nations accountable for the actions of a few individuals is the very same fallacy. Here in Minneapolis, people of every background have broken the law, and when they do, we hold them accountable as individuals. That's how justice works. Cutting off an entire diaspora from its roots doesn't keep anyone safe. It only deepens division at a time when connection is more important than ever. The bond between Somalia and Minneapolis is long-standing and it's deep. We will not let Donald Trump's bans alienate our Somali residents, our neighbors, and friends whom we love.
What are we hearing from members of Congress, particularly ones from Minnesota or from senators as well here in the backdrop of what Alex is describing there, that there has already been this scrutiny, these attacks, these threats towards Somali Americans, and some of that has come directly from elected leaders on the right. What are you seeing and hearing?
Right. So, I mean, and one of those is Congressman Tom Emmer, who is one of the top Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives. He kind of reiterating some of those points that we just heard from Alex, saying that if those that are committing fraud, in his words, are here illegally, deport them immediately. If they're naturalized citizens, revoke their citizenship and deport them quickly thereafter. If we need to change the law to do that, I will. At the same time, we're hearing across the aisle, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who is, of course, herself also Somali American. She is basically saying, don't paint with a broad brush the actions of potentially a few that are being investigated and pursued here. On top of this, we expect Republicans to really amp up this story when they return here to Washington come next week. Already, we have seen the House Oversight Committee, the chairman, James Comer, announced that they're going to have a hearing on this next week where they're inviting state lawmakers to testify. And he's now also urging Governor Tim Walz, who, of course, is up for re-election next year and, of course, has been in the spotlight because of his former run for vice president. He wants him to testify in February alongside the state AG. So this story is going to continue to persist here in Washington.
Federal officials now say they're freezing payments to Minnesota childcare centers while they investigate claims of fraud. Deputy HHS Secretary Jim O'Neill posting on social media today, "We have turned off the money spigot and we are finding the fraud." The Health and Human Services leaders also posted a video outlining new steps targeting what they call rampant fraud in Minnesota.
My office, ACF, provides Minnesota $185 million in child care funds each year That money should be helping 19,000 American children, including toddlers and infants.
Starting today, we require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment.
HHS leaders say they're also ordering a state audit of centers suspected of fraud, including attendance records, licenses, and inspections, among other records. They're also launching a fraud reporting system. You can find that on childcare.gov. Reporter Ashley Grahams is digging further into the viral social media claims that reignited this latest fraud investigation.
To put law and order back in the
You might have seen this video posted by YouTuber Nick Shirley, alleged.
This morning, a federal investigation into alleged daycare fraud in Minnesota is growing, and the Trump administration says it's halting all federal child care payments to the state.
We believe the state of Minnesota has allowed scammers and fake daycares to siphon millions of taxpayer dollars over the past decade.
Earlier this week, the Department of Homeland Security posting video of agents knocking on doors of more than 30 businesses around Minneapolis in an effort, it says, to root out fraud. Overnight, Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz saying President Trump was politicizing the issue to defund programs that help Minnesotans.
There's no children inside this building.
It all comes after this viral video racked up more than 100 million views online. Right-wing YouTuber Nick Shirley, who describes himself as an independent journalist, says he went to 10 child care centers receiving federal and state subsidies and did not see children at the sites. State officials say many of the centers were previously investigated and no fraud was uncovered, adding 9 of the 10 daycare centers featured in the video are still operating and receiving taxpayer subsidies.
While we have questions about some of the methods that were used in the video, we do take the concerns that the video raises about fraud very seriously.
The director of one of the daycares Shirley visits in the video speaking to NBC affiliate Care 11, saying his center is operational and that employees are now getting threats.
A lot of people are not feeling safe.
The Justice Department has been running sprawling fraud investigations across multiple social service programs in Minnesota for years, starting during the Biden administration. Some of those charged have included members of the state's large Somali community, which has led to President Trump ramping up his rhetoric.
We always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster.
Federal prosecutors estimate the total amount of fraud in Minnesota could top $9 billion. But state officials have pushed back on that number, saying it's nowhere near that high. Peter?
Gabe, it also comes as we're getting new details about an explosion in Venezuela amid the president's campaign there. What more do we know?
Daycare funding. Minnesota's top attorney says the push to freeze federal daycare funding could be illegal. The Trump administration says it just stopped at least $185 million in yearly aid to the state after this video from a conservative YouTuber went viral. In it, he accused nearly a dozen daycare centers of defrauding the state. And that sparked what the Homeland Security Department called a massive investigation. WCCO's Jonah Kaplan explains why child care providers fear the funding freeze will have a devastating impact on families.
Christmas vacation is almost over, but some daycare managers on Wednesday were warning of an extended break. Amanda Schillinger runs an early learning program in Burnsville. She joined colleagues and other advocates for a rally at the state capitol.
Our child care center and others like us will have to close our doors. 75% of the children at our program qualify through the state for child care funding. We can't afford to continue to operate if we lose 75% of our enrollment.
The warning coming just one day after the Trump administration announced it's holding back funding for daycares in Minnesota because of allegations of widespread fraud made in this viral video from YouTube influencer Nick Shirley. Federal officials also said all states will have to change how they'll submit receipts for child care reimbursement, complete with photo proof of services.
The fraud that is occurring is not at the hands of families. We need to be looking at who's in power, who's making decisions, who's guarding the purse strings of our tax dollars.
WCCO News visited several of the daycares mentioned in the video, and we reviewed state records, which show regulators conducted inspections within the last 6 months. One daycare, the ABC Learning Center, also shared with us security footage showing kids being dropped off and picked up on the day Nick Shirley recorded his visit. Beyond daycares, fraud is a major issue in several other social services in Minnesota. 14 Medicaid-supported programs, not including childcare, are under state and federal investigation.
Fraud is never acceptable, but cutting off child care funding to everyone in the state is not the answer, and it's not acceptable.
In St. Paul, Jonah Kaplan, WCCO News.
Minnesota's Attorney General says he's exploring legal options to keep daycares funded. In a new statement today, Keith Ellison called the federal funding cuts a hasty, scorched earth attack that may well be illegal. Prosecutors have not filed charges against anyone associated with the daycare shown in that viral video. State regulators just rechecked the centers this week. A daycare not featured in that video says the heated rhetoric surrounding the allegations has real-life consequences. Police say someone broke into Nokomis Daycare Center in southeast Minneapolis earlier this week. You can see holes in the walls and damage around the building.
We are not a part of any harmful things that are being said. I want to say no intimidation is going to stop us.
The daycare's manager says burglars escaped with information about employees and kids. Stick with WCCO News for continuing coverage of the ongoing fraud investigations in Minnesota.
And what happened here is absolutely unthinkable. And it is the direct result of the inflammatory rhetoric coming from the constant barrage of harassment from not only the current federal administration, but half of our Minnesota legislators as well. But now a random YouTube personality can cause this much fear. Fear needs to stop. Our children, our families, and teachers and providers work hard enough without feeling scared to come to work every single day. What happened here underscores that there is reason to be scared. I know the Minnesota childcare system inside and out. I know how incredibly difficult it is to commit fraud in the childcare assistance program. I also know that our childcare providers who are of Somali descent are being racially targeted because I have witnessed it firsthand. We want the state to catch childcare centers committing fraud. We want them to be held accountable. It hurts all of us. It hurts children especially, and it hurts childcare centers that are working tirelessly to provide high-quality childcare. But fraud does occur across race, across income, and across geography. When a few childcare centers that serve white children commit fraud, do we decide that every childcare center that serves white children is committing fraud? No. The Somali childcare community deserves that same respect.
All right. Hello and welcome. Let me try this again. I can't speak today. Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Amanda Schillinger and I'm a child care center director. My name is spelled AMANDASCHILLINGER. Many people in our child care community are afraid to come forward and share their stories today because they are being targeted. I am glad to be able to be here today to speak in support of them. Here's what I would love to be doing right now today as a child care center director. I would love to be singing and dancing and playing and reading with children. I'd love to be welcoming families and supporting staff. I would even love to be doing year-end paperwork, but instead, I need to be here. I need to be supporting our childcare industry and the hardworking and dedicated Somali childcare community who are being unfairly vilified, and to make sure that our families and families throughout this great state have childcare and early learning programs for their children, and to make sure our staff have jobs. So let's be honest about how we really got here. Our president decided he doesn't like the Somali community and he wants to destroy them. Speaker DeMuth and the GOP caucus sent a YouTuber out to create the narrative they want out there, not the truth. what they want you to believe. The childcare system in Minnesota is very complicated, even for those of us who have worked in it for decades. So I can understand that it is easy to believe what you see on social media. But the truth is that Minnesota has guardrails in place to make defrauding the childcare system extremely difficult. Minnesota does investigate suspected fraud in childcare and hold people accountable, and they will continue to do so because fraud is never acceptable. But cutting off childcare funding to everyone in the state is not the answer, and it's not acceptable. So what does it look like when Minnesota childcare funding is frozen? Over 20,000 children in over 4,000 programs across our state will lose access to childcare and early learning. Their families will not be able to go to work because they don't have childcare. Our childcare center and others like us will have to close our doors. 75% of the children at our program qualify through the state for childcare funding. We can't afford to continue to operate if we lose 75% of our enrollment. Without childcare assistance funding, our center will close within a month. As those families no longer have money to spend because they don't have jobs, because they don't have childcare.
Somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it.
Other businesses in our communities will be impacted by a loss of workforce and by a loss of income. And many will have to close their doors as well. You see, freezing childcare funding does not just impact families and children, it impacts everyone. During the COVID pandemic, we learned how vital childcare was to sustaining our state and country. If we allow this funding freeze to happen, all Minnesotans are going to suffer. We cannot succumb to hate and fear-mongering. It is not who we are as Minnesotans. We are people who surround our communities with love and support. So instead of tearing down our Somali community and our childcare centers, let's lift them up. Let's make sure that our children have safe places to learn and grow.
Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not much of a good speaker, but I'll try my best. My name is Deco Noor. I'm a parent who receives federal funding for childcare for my kiddo. Over 20,000 kids will lose access to childcare programs. And that 20,000 thousands of children rely on childcare and thousands of parents rely on childcare. Therefore, if childcare will, oh my God. Okay.
Nigga, please. Serious.
I'm currently a medical student. I rely on childcare. I work. If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
We're the whites. Nobody ever cares if bad things happen to us anymore.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Carly Gatiza-Wattoon. I am state representative. I am the DFL co-chair of the Children and Families Committee in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Our job as lawmakers is to show up every day to make Minnesotans' lives better. And Minnesotans deserve to be able to trust that each and every taxpayer dollar is being used responsibly to meet our collective needs. And due to bad actors, that trust is in jeopardy. I'm just as mad as you are.
I hit a woman for the first time in my life, and I'm having fun.
Criminals taking any dollar that is meant to help children and families in the state of Minnesota is completely unacceptable. We're taking fraud seriously. We're working every day to improve our systems, hold those criminals accountable, and move our state forward. That's why it's incredibly frustrating to me that Donald Trump and Republicans want to use this as a political vehicle to cut funding entirely to our state. It's irresponsible. That's right. It's irresponsible at best, and it's despicable at worst to cast blanket dispersions on those caring for our littlest Minnesotans, particularly those of Somali American descent. Imagine if a few people stole food from one of the nation's largest grocers, and instead of strengthening their safeguards, they just decided to stop selling food entirely.
No more money for you! It's lazy! You lazy! You lazy! No more money for you!
Imagine that the country's largest health insurance provider was under federal investigation due to fraudulent claims. And before that investigation was complete, the government just decided to stop funding Medicare and Medicaid entirely. Using a broad brush to eliminate the very programs that are helping Minnesotan families is not the answer. That's right. Fraud prevention is about policy and not politics. It's about solutions and not spectacle. But everything that we've seen from the federal government this week is about politics. President Trump is targeting Minnesota because his goal is to distract, divide, and demonize. He has shown over and over again that instead of working to solve problems, he points fingers and places blame on a particular group of people. In order to distract Minnesotans from his unpopularity, his failed tariffs and rising prices, his corruption, he's attacking and defunding Minnesota.
I'm done with life, and it's all Jermaine's fault. It's always Jermaine's fault.
In an effort to divide us, he calls our neighbors garbage. And instead of seeking bipartisan solutions, he demonizes and attacks his political opponents. The reality is, Minnesota is one of the best states in the country to raise a family, start a business, or retire. And freezing these child care assistance funds directly impacts small businesses statewide at a time when employers are already struggling to keep their doors open and parents already can't afford early care and learning options. The federal government now will be keeping even more of our tax dollars, although Minnesotans already give more than we receive. It is my understanding that the Department of Children, Youth, and Families is working with their county partners, the teams at the OIG and the BCA on reports of alleged fraud, while the Trump administration continues to find any reason to defund public programs in order to give tax cuts to billionaires. Here in Minnesota, we are going to stay focused on fraud prevention and solutions that will actually make Minnesotans' lives better. DFLers will be doing everything that we can this session on top of fraud prevention to make sure that Minnesota stays a great place to live, work, and raise a family, even as Trump works to defund our state. Thank you.
And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white.
Hi, my name is Karen Marotz, CarinMrotz, and I work in the Minnesota Attorney General's office, and I'm here to share a statement from Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. The Trump administration is threatening funding for the essential child care services that countless families across Minnesota rely on, apparently all on the basis of one video on social media. To say I am outraged is an understatement. Let me be clear. Fraud is unacceptable, and individuals responsible for it should be prosecuted. I've been holding fraudsters and scammers accountable for years and will continue to do so. Since I was first elected Attorney General, my office has prosecuted over 300 cases of Medicaid fraud and won over $80 million in judgments and restitution. And that's not counting our success in going after private sector scammers who rip off Minnesota consumers. Last year, I led a bipartisan push at the Minnesota legislature to expand the resources and tools available to my Medicaid fraud team, and I plan to do that again this year. What I will not do, if it is all within my power, is let the Trump administration devastate funding for services that Minnesota families depend on to afford their lives.
I need that money.
We've seen this move before. In mid-December, the Trump administration gave 4 counties in Minnesota 1 month to conduct in-person interviews with almost 100,000 households that receive SNAP benefits to re-verify their eligibility. This demand was both impossible to complete and unnecessary, as SNAP recipients are already re-verified roughly once a year. The Trump administration threatened to cut off food support for almost 500,000 Minnesotans, including over 150,000 children, if Minnesota did not comply with this impossible demand.
Can a nigga live? Can a nigga live? Please.
Just last week, I sued to stop that cruelty. And not for the first time. I filed this latest lawsuit just 6 weeks after I sued the Trump administration to stop the Trump administration from taking food off the tables of low-income Minnesotans during his government shutdown, and we won. There are legal and appropriate ways for the federal and state government to ensure that programs are being administered with integrity. As we have seen time and time again this year, however, this administration seems to have little interest in following the law, including laws that are designed to help state and federal agencies work together. My team and I are exploring all our legal options to ensure that critical childcare services do not get abruptly slashed based on pretext and grandstanding.
Give me the money. Give me the money for all I would do. Give me the money.
This hasty, scorched earth attack is not just wrong, it may well be illegal, and my team and I remain committed to protecting the people of Minnesota to the fullest extent of the law. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Snyder, and I'm a little nervous to be here today with you all. I'm a director of a child care center here in St. Paul, and I'm really proud of the work that we do at my center and across this state to provide care for children and families. Deco just let me know that she had to skip school today and she just got emotional being here. And I feel like we all are feeling that same way. Like it's just the emotions are right there.
See, this is what I'm talking about. It's just sort of like this, like, don't you think that's problematic? Like, don't you think women like me are doing? It's like, you know, listen, we don't have time for political correctness. We don't have time
It's not about
to
being politically correct. And they make it personal, too. They're not saying you've got to.
It's not lost on me that there are providers who would want to be here but are afraid to be here. We all know, like, Melissa Hortman serves here at this Capitol. Senator Hoffman continues to serve, and I'm here to speak because God didn't give me a spirit of fear. And I'm here to speak up on behalf of children and families and providers, and no one invites children to come speak at these things. So here I am, you get me. My center was opened by my mom in 1998. She was a family advocate, and she saw that there was a really huge need for affordable childcare that was full-time in our city. So she opened our center, and like I said, we've been really proud to accept childcare assistance from the beginning because we believe that every child deserves access to high quality early learning.
Yes. 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 Right.
Many of the families at my center are one paycheck away from becoming homeless. I'm not exaggerating. If childcare assistance is turned off, children can't come to care. That means their parents can't go to work. If they don't go to work, they don't get paid. They risk losing their jobs. If that happens, they cannot make their rent check that month. Many families in Minnesota are living paycheck to paycheck as
These blacks.
it is. It's not right. And I'm emotional too, so I apologize. I'm doing my best. In many cases, childcare assistance is a crucial piece of survival. I'm generally scared for what can happen next if funding is stopped. And I can't help but think that this is part of a larger designed plan and strategy to cut public funding. And I do see some signs over here that say stop fraud, and I agree, stop it. There are wait lists for these programs that are years long. There is fraud, the fraud that is occurring is not at the hands of families. We need to be looking at who's in power, who's making decisions, who's guarding the purse strings of our tax dollars, my tax dollars too, and making sure that children have places to go that are safe for them to learn, parents can go to work, and providers can keep their doors open. That's right. That's what I have to say.
Make it stop. Make the hurt stop, please. Like.
I went a little off script. Thank you. We would like to open this up for questions.
A question for Karen at the AG's office. Can you address some of the inspection process? What sort of signs of fraud do inspectors look for when they're doing these inspections?
I can speak to it. Yeah, I would love for the provider who's been part of one of those investigations to speak to her experience. And if you have follow-up questions about that, you can speak with our press team.
We have reached out to the state officials and no one's gone back. So if you can shed some light on it, that'd be great.
So my experience is that childcare providers are part of randomized audits all the time for childcare assistance. I've been in charge of childcare assistance at my program since about 2010. They come, they ask you for your attendance records. It is extremely detailed. Any information that you don't provide to them on that day, you cannot go back and say, oh, wait, I forgot this one, or oh, maybe this one was wrong. Can I correct it? There's no room for that. They're looking at very detailed things. Like, for example, if you have an X instead of an A for absent, that's considered a ding against you. That's something that they'll write you a letter that says this is a citation for suspected fraud for an X instead of an A. So imagine my surprise at this narrative that it's so easy to scam childcare assistance.
Is it different in these safety violations, that inspection visits?
Yes, they are different.
So when the DCYF said earlier this week that they had found, no findings of fraud, is she speaking to something different than those site visits for safety violations?
I can't speak to what that specific person is speaking to, but my understanding is how the systems operate is DCYF houses both childcare assistance and licensing, but they operate separately. Does that make sense?
You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
So in the new requirements that were announced today, what's new compared to the process you just described? What are you being asked to do now? What is different? What's your understanding of that?
I don't have a very good understanding of that. I have seen what you have all seen from the federal government, which was a tweet that said photos and receipts. Like I said, we're family-owned business, so my mom called me and said, well, write to them and tell them that we'll, whatever they want, we'll send. And we will, because we want kids to come to our centers. So I have no problem complying with anything that they want.
This is a follow-up for the AG's office.
Okay. I just wanted to step in and I address briefly the question about whether or not the health and safety visits are corresponding with some of the reports of fraud. It's my understanding that some of these more recent allegations of fraud are based on the idea that there aren't any children in these centers and that they're falsifying attendance records to gather taxpayer dollars for children who aren't actually attending the program. But when DCYF investigators go and check on health and safety visits, they usually see children at the centers, so I think that they are connected, but perhaps not in the way that you're asking.
Nigga, please. Serious.
Looking at how many kids each time they're going in, is that your understanding?
I don't. They
do. Count our kids every time they come to visit.
Every day. How many kids are enrolled? How many kids are here today? Who's trying them in and out?
All right. Next.
Do you guys have any results from the DCYF investigations on Monday where they went and checked the child care centers that were used in the video?
Right. Yes. So I am not able to speak to that as it is an ongoing investigation, but we have reached out to the department. We are in touch with them. We're looking for, to hear back on the standard review. Yep.
I have a clarifying question on
Can you speak about the different times that daycare is open? Different hours, specific hours, after school hours?
Oh, right. Well, I think, every daycare center gets to set their own hours. We have very few centers in Minnesota that operate outside of typical business hours between maybe 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., depending on their location. In fact, I think it would be really beneficial if we could expand upon that for folks who work third shift and folks up on the Iron Range who work non-traditional hours as well. So that's something that we're actually considering in committee and how we can support providers. But it just is different at every center, I think. So,
Representative, you mentioned that this broad strokes approach is not appropriate in your view from the federal government. Standing here today, whether it's the daycare centers that were included in that video or in other parts of Minnesota, are you confident, based on your work in this chamber, that there is not any widespread fraud going on?
It's very difficult to prove a negative. I think that we have to be very careful when we base allegations on the amount of funding that goes to childcare providers for providing childcare. We can't just look at the amount of money that they've billed and then say, where are these millions of dollars going? Childcare is very expensive. Minnesota is one of the more expensive states in the nation to afford childcare. And we break it down. If we do simple back of the napkin math, you divide 1.4 or $1.7 million by 52 weeks, it's closer to $32,000. You divide that by 40 hours a week on average, you get closer to $817 per child.
No more money for you! It's lazy, you lazy!
Take control. Take control of your city.
These aren't exorbitant amounts of money. They're just real numbers because it is costly to provide quality care for kids.
Could a provider talk about exactly when they will feel the impacts of the freeze?
I would love information on that. I don't have any. We've not been given any. I don't know.
When do you typically receive the equivalent of a check?
We get paid after services are rendered. So we complete our billing process. We submit them to the county for payment. I believe the statute is within 21 days of the receipt of the bill, we're supposed to get paid. Your guess is as good as mine if we're going to get paid or not.
There's a question down here, sorry. In the
I guess I'm trying to get behind how restrictive this additional oversight is. Is there a reason that the state could not provide the federal government the requested records in time to make sure funding is released as scheduled?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you are asking about like the photos and the information that was put out via social media instead of an actual official letter to our state government, which seems like a weird way to govern to me, but nonetheless. Yes, after the fact, after the tweet came out. So, we're gathering, DCYF is gathering information as best they can. They've done much outreach to the federal.
This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology.
Time has expired.
My life was threatened. Thank you.
federal government to try to clarify. But as of right now, I mean, we have not been requiring photos of some of these logs, these sorts of things. And it is something that we can take under guidance when we return to the legislative session. And that's something that we've been doing for years, actually, working on child care assistance and strengthening the program integrity. We've been working on all of that with the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And I think that just it's happening so quickly that we just have to make sure that we are getting clarity on what they're actually asking for and what they're going to be requiring. But right now the monies are frozen and we haven't gotten all the detail that we need.
In 2014, Minnesota made national news.
Yeah, let's get going because this gentleman's up next.
Oh, yes.
Can you address that? Is that in place now? Is that planned to be?
Right. Yes. So the question was about electronic attendance monitoring, which is something that the federal government has been requiring. Minnesota has gotten a waiver for it over past years, and we have appropriated funding for the program. It will be going into effect actually in June of 2026. So we're just months away from full implementation of that, but it has been an ongoing work.
And we'll be happy to answer further questions. We're going to have to wrap things up at this point. We're so grateful to all of you for being here and for all of your work. We'll continue to talk. Thank you so much. And many thanks to all of you.
Happy New Year.
We're going to take this one.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all? You niggas are crazy!
Hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad.
This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me because I didn't get a single apology.
Time has expired.
My life was threatened. Thank you.
Hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad, hoes mad. Big talk on the TV. Somali boy count cash, move sneaky. Paper in the daycare, paper in the kitchen on the farm, different story, different vision. Every office, cousin got position. Every meeting, bro, I got a mission. Smile for the photo, suit look clean. Under the table, whole crew eat green. Somali scam king, hey, we run that. 8 bill gone, it can't get none back. On God, every hustle, every angle. Comrade, Kylo, say, flip it, untangle. Somali scam king, talk sweet, walk me in, dress code halal, money so hot I'm clean. Rebeat, sign here, that's the anthem. Whole block eating off the big boy scams. Damn, 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 damn.
Somali scam king. Somali scam king.
Talk sweet, talk sweet, talk sweet.
Somali scam king.
Talk sweet, talk sweet, talk sweet.